Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I'm physically incapable of starting my backup recording until Bradley does. Even if his glitches and mine is started, I have to stop it, wait for him to start, and then press record again.
Which is
because
funny
there's a system.
We don't even sync our recordings either. So we don't even do anything where we're like, let's clap at the same time, make sure our things are together. You know what I mean? We never even do that, which is hilarious, but it is what it is.
No, because the backup audio is in case of emergency. I think other than one major time, I think you've only had to pull specific parts, moments from the backup audio and drop it into the main thing. You just use the audio file that Zoom kicks out for you as your baseline.
It's so lovely to mix our voices together perfectly and in sync, and so I like that one more. But on the rare chance we have to use our
happened.
Oof,
You've
that
done
is a
it.
fun time.
God bless. Look, I don't think we give Bradley. I give Bradley a lot of shit on the show. I don't think we give him enough credit for being the one that actually edits these episodes. Because every time I've had to edit an episode, I want to hang myself. That was a joke. I would never do that.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I sometimes I wish we were like those podcasts out there that just don't even edit. They just record the whole thing. Well, not even that. Sometimes there's people who just record their whole thing and then they just put it up. They don't even care.
That is crazy to me.
Done.
That is
they
absolutely
don't peer review it or
insane
anything.
to me.
They just go, that was good enough, and then they upload it immediately, and it's available next day. And it's okay, well, that's lovely for you all, but I wish I had an editor that we could pay to do this.
That's great for you. Occasionally, we have to cut out stuff that we said.
Yeah, of course, all the time.
Either because we messed it up, or because it was a 10-minute tangent on Dragon Age the Veil Guard, and we didn't need that in the episode that is supposed to be about Star Wars.
Right.
I almost never notice when he cuts stuff out. That's the sad part. I always remember to myself, I wonder if he's going to keep the 10 minutes about how much I want to fuck the old man from Dragon Age the Veil Guard in the episode, and then completely have forgotten about it in the 24 hours between recording and when he gives me the file to listen to. I love being a podcaster, don't you, Bradley?
Of course.
Of course. Of course. I love it. And speaking of things that I love, that's a transition.
Okay.
Look, I'm doing the best I can with what I have. I've been low-key dreading this block of episodes, but I feel like we have to do it. I feel like if we don't do it, it will never get done. What are we talking about today, Bradley?
Today we're talking about The Acolyte.
We're doing The Acolyte. Yay!
Loves it.
Look, I've been feeling generally positive towards Disney Plus content at the moment because Agatha All Along, which I've been watching with my partner, has been reminding me that they can actually do good TV sometimes. And so I've actually been quite excited to come back to The Acolyte and talk about what I loved and talk about what didn't really work for me. So this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to looking at this show.
I am too. And just as a general note before we get started, if you haven't already listened to our episode 0, which we recorded months ago when The Acolyte was actually airing, we recorded it right before the first episode aired. Please go back and listen to that. We talk about some of the actors. We talk about some of the things we thought about for the season as a whole, what it might happen, all that good stuff. See how wrong we are.
Look how wrong we are on the podcast.
If it even makes sense, go back and listen to that first. So pause this, go listen to that, then come back, and then we'll talk about the first episode together.
Yes, because we've been doing some of these shows not as they're airing, partially because schedule and partially because it kind of makes the quality of the episodes better. We've been releasing our episode 0s earlier, so you will have to scroll back a little bit. But also, why not listen to our coverage of some of the other shows that we've done recently too while you're at it? Just go listen through the Gold Squadron Gays backlog, but maybe don't listen to the pilot episode because it sucks ass.
I was actually thinking as we were about to record this, we haven't done a live action show in a hot minute.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a long time. I don't know the actual timeline. This year we've done...
It's got to be at least... Well, it's The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch 8 episodes.
Bad Batch is what always pushes
20
us for sure.
weeks out of
But we
our
did
52 weeks that we had this year to record content.
Yeah, because Bad Batch takes up most of it. Then we also did Tales of the Empire, and then we
We
also
did.
did a comic. So like, we've done a lot of non-live TV stuff. So it's like, or I keep saying live TV. We've done a lot live action TV stuff since Ahsoka. I think it was our last
Hmm.
live action. So that's crazy work that we've just been pushing and pushing other stuff. But
Yeah, it's
it's
been.
interesting.
But we're going to do this one, and then we're going to do Skeleton Crew, which premieres December 3rd on Disney Plus. And then we are going to go from there because we don't know when Andor Season 2 is going to come out. And also, they are massively slowing down the releases. Thank God.
I was gonna say, speaking of slowing down releases, they
Speaking of
claim
slowing down releases,
that the writer for the Rey movie has exited.
I think he has exited. I couldn't find a
I
whole
think
lot
he
of
did.
details
I
on
think he
this.
just did a long time ago, and then they're just now saying it. Like, I don't know why they're doing it now, but they're just now saying it because I guess I feel like that, like, she wouldn't be still signed on or whatever if there wasn't an actual script. So I just feel
The
like,
movie the movie I think is going to happen. And look, the thing that people have to remember is that production drama is normal. It is a perfectly normal thing. It happens for every movie. Is it unfortunate that the guy that has spent this much time writing the Rey movie has exited? Yes. Does that mean the movie is on fire behind the scenes? No. It's perfectly normal. He's moved on to a different project. So I'm not particularly worried about Stephen Knight exiting the Rey movie. It might push it back a little bit, but again, I'm not concerned. Creative team shifting is normal. Actors being replaced or stepping away is normal. Reshoots are normal. These are all normal parts of the process. Sometimes you get a weird thing that happens, like Lord and Miller getting fired off of Solo. That was weird. That was
right.
weird that they would replace directors in the middle of making a movie.
And then, like,
it seems like it was kind of a special case. We don't have the time to litigate that right now.
Right.
I have my suspicions about what happened, but that's a case of it being a little weird. But most of the time, like this early in the process, it's going to be normal. You're going to go through a couple of different writers. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised Stephen Knight lasted as long as he did. I'm kind of surprised that it took that long.
Yeah.
But we cannot talk about the Rey movie forever because I have a fuck ton of notes.
Okay, let's get going then. So today we're going to be talking about The Acolyte, Episode 1, Lost/Found, where the Jedi pursue a suspect after a shocking crime. Charles, was one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
I actually have them both prepared.
Ooh, great.
I normally do them off the cuff, but I have them both
because I totally
prepared.
forgot about it until just now.
For the thing that I liked, I loved rewatching this episode, having watched the finale, and seeing all of the little details that they put in that leads up to where the finale of this show is going to go. There's an incredible moment in particular where Sol is having a conversation with Jecki and Yord. He's mostly having it with Jecki, but Yord is kind of standing there. And he explains that May is dead and that May started a fire that killed Osha's family, right? And then they start arriving at Karlak, and Jecki and Yord go to the cockpit. And there's this moment where it stays on Sol for an extra couple of seconds while he goes on a face journey. And that means nothing if you watch the episode the first time. If you've seen episode 6 or 7, I think it's episode 7. That's the second flashback. I don't remember. If you've watched that episode, you know what's going through his head now. And that's something you would never pick up on the first time you watch the episode. But when you watch it again, you realize how tight a lot of this storytelling actually is and how much they've set the seeds early on to know where they're going. A really fun mystery is a mystery you can watch twice. Once when you don't know what's going on and you're trying to figure it out. And again, when you know what's going on and you can look at all the clues and be like, aha, that's what that meant the whole time. My one thing I disliked. Bradley, I'm going to get real controversial here.
Oh, God.
I thought of this. I couldn't let it go. I have to bring it up as my thing I disliked of the episode. And it's going to be a thing I disliked about the show overall. And it's entirely in hindsight. When I watched this episode, it was visually stunning. It was incredibly interesting to look at. I saw beautiful cityscapes with ships. I saw incredible, shots of the ship in the asteroid field. I saw a lot of aliens. There's a ton of aliens in this that all look practical, that have the prosthetics. that's really like visually interesting. I didn't see a season two. And I think there's a report that came out from Variety. Now, I've been clear, I don't think that The Acolyte got not greenlit for season two for a specific reason. I don't think there was one thing that made the executives go, we're not going to put the green light on another season of this. However, if you were to ask me to weight the reasons that we kind of know why it didn't get a season two, I would put the most weight on the fact it went over budget. And watching this episode now and looking at how much they put into this episode, it is impossible not to notice just how much is crammed into the visuals and design of this show that kind of didn't need to be. This is a show that massively could have benefited from somebody higher up telling them no. No, you can't have all these aliens in this scene. Like the bar scene, there's a ton of weird little aliens. It's fun, but on a production level, it costs a lot of money to do that. You could have scaled that back. Look, I'm critical of Dave Filoni. I very much am. The reason Dave Filoni keeps getting shows in part is for the same things that his shows get criticized for, which is looking cheap and having a bunch of humans and like maybe one or two aliens, but he gets to keep making shows. And it's because he's turning them in under budget or on budget. And this show, they threw everything into it. And I don't know if it was budget mismanagement. I don't know if like costs came up that they just couldn't predict, like they had it budgeted out and then stuff happened, they had to reshoot it or whatever. But I'm sorry, I can't enjoy visually watching the show knowing how much money they spent on it, and they absolutely did not need to spend this much money on it. The writing is great, the characters are great, the acting is great. Some of the visuals are very interesting and fun, but man, I really dislike how expensive this show looks. And that is entirely within the context of knowing it went over budget and suspecting that part of the reason that this story will not continue in this form is because they blew their money on background aliens when they absolutely did not need to. You could do one or two, but some of these scenes are way too packed with visual effects and practical effects. They are cool, and we'll talk about them, but that's a dark cloud that's going to hang over the whole series for me. Bradley, what about you? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I liked was how expensive this show looked. I really liked
Oh,
all the
fuck
creatures.
off. Look, the show looks great. I saw it on the big
I know
screen.
what you're
It
saying.
was fantastic.
No.
But in hindsight, no.
Well, I'll say that I guess what I liked about the show is that I can tell that they didn't film it on the volume, if that makes sense. It's something about like the volume. Don't get me wrong, the volume is amazing and it's a great tool to use. Whereas I think on other shows it's only used and they don't use anything else. So it's kind of obvious if that makes sense. I think the difference is like when you say like budget too, it's like I think the difference is like let's use Andor as the example. Like they're obviously on location shoots. They rarely, if ever, use the volume. But everybody in the show is a human. There's not really aliens in that show. Then if you compare that to this, which is a combination of a little bit of the volume maybe, but not really because I'm pretty sure Leslie said she didn't even want to use the volume that much. And it's on location plus practical effects. Like that's where the budget kind of starts to blow up. It's like you can't do all these three things as much as gorgeous as the show looks. So I will say I do like it. I do like the visual element of it. I see your problem with it. However, I did love how much care went into the practical effects because something about seeing physical aliens is so Star Warsy. Like it's just harkens back to true classic Star Wars is because I mean they had to do practical effects. There was
Wolfman
no
mask.
Right, exactly. There's no like, oh, let's do it in fucking Photoshop or After Effects later. Like you just can't do that. Like there just wasn't a thing in the 70s and 80s. So the fact that we can do the volume now, we can do that stuff is nice. However, I think they just didn't use the volume to their advantage this time around because I'm sure there were plenty of scenes where if you were to take them out, I just feel like it would have been a little easier. It just depends. I don't know what those on location scenes are. So we can't be like, oh, they're staring at the ocean. This is obviously next to the real ocean. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that for a fact, but if that's the case, you didn't need to film at the ocean in Taiwan or wherever, they filmed overseas, because I know they filmed it overseas somewhere. But it was just like that can get expensive after a while, and I totally understand that. So that all being said, I loved a lot of the visual effects in this. What I didn't like about this episode, I don't, and this is more of a plot point slash like just creative device. I don't love visions, or when a character is having a vision, or like it's like something that is not real, like or not tangible, and we don't know it's not real until about halfway through the vision or something like that. There's this particular part we'll get to where Osha has a vision of May and she's following her through the snow or something, and then it flashes back to I don't know, something about that to me. I don't love that kind of, like, this is just a personal preference of like I'm having a force vision, but like I can see different things, and like there's things happening, but we're not sure if it's real, but or we're being misled a little bit. I don't know. I don't like using it as a narrative tool to mislead you purposefully to then later on show you the real thing. Like I don't know. I feel dishonest in a narrative sense in that point. There's other ways around it. I think showing actual flashbacks, which we do get full episodes of flashbacks, which I do love that, because then you don't get cheated on the flashbacks. You don't get like, oh, it's only 30 seconds and it's like they just hire background, actors to play the other characters that we're never going to meet or get to know or anything like that. And that cheapens the flashback, I think. This time around, it was just more of like a confusing, like, why is she getting this force vision-y thing? I don't know. We'll get into it during the scene, but I didn't love it. It's a personal preference, but I just didn't love that little blip.
I will clarify before we dive into the episode that I don't want to seem like I'm saying never put aliens in your thing because it's too expensive.
Right.
Or never do the scene in Andor where the Fondor fights an entire Imperial ship over space, and it really kind of means nothing, but it's cool to look at. I'm not saying never do these things. My criticism is not the existence of these things. My criticism is in the producing of this content.
Sure.
My criticism is the budget management and how that was handled. And when you look at the show, you can tell that a lot of money went into these things. And these were things that could have been scaled back. Of course, there's also, we're going to get into it, especially when we get into Day Night, which are episodes 4 and 5. This also should have probably been a six episode show instead of an 8 episode show. It should have been either 6 episodes or it should have been 10. It should have been one or the other. 8 is such an awkward number of episodes for this show. And so, just to be clear, that's what my criticism is of it. Is my criticism is how this show was made, not the ideas which went into it, if that makes more sense.
So you actually bring up a good point, which is before we even start talking about the episode, I did want to talk about the titling of all the episodes, actually. Really.
Yes.
Okay,
almost all the episodes.
Yeah, almost all of them, which is a very interesting naming convention slash, I don't even know what you would call it. The naming of the episodes, or the formatting of the titles or whatever. Okay, I want to know why. And my question is why. And I don't know what you think. Maybe you have a personal like opinion about why you think they named it like this. But
I think I can explain it.
Okay, because I don't love it. I don't love any time you put a slash in between your title, only because it makes me think that you've combined two things, and I don't love that, because that
in the
to
parlance
me is telling me that this is 2 episodes combined into one in the writing room.
In the parlance of TV episodes, generally that's what that means. If you're looking at an episode in a streaming service or something, and it says X/Y, usually that's 2 episodes that they've just put together. We are seeing some exceptions. Agatha All Along, which I mentioned earlier, is doing song lyrics. So some of its titles have the slash in there, but it's also because they're song lyrics. I think what's going on for these, I think that it was originally that 5 of the episodes were meant to have X/Y because each word refers to a different co-protagonist's journey. May is lost, okay. Osha is found. Or the other way around. You can make the case that May is found by Darth Teeth and Osha was lost to the Jedi. You could argue that, but it's supposed to invoke that sense of duality. When we do the flashbacks, we only have one because they're together.
Oh shit!
They are not together in this entire show. They are very rarely together, except for, again, in the finale episode where it's just 2 words, the Acolyte. Right, so I think that's what they meant to do with this, is each word like teach/corrupt. Right, that's a big one we're going to get later. So I think that's what the titling of these episodes is supposed to refer to. And then it's abundantly clear. It's so obvious that episodes 4 and 5 are supposed to be one episode.
I was going to say, because that's the only one that breaks the naming
That's the
convention
only one
you're
that breaks the
speaking of.
naming convention.
Yeah.
And also, episode 4 is kind of the weakest episode of the show because it's all set up.
Because it's set up for 5.
We talk about a moving pieces into place episode. Episode 4 of this show is almost nothing but a moving pieces into place episode.
100%. Yeah, it's actually a shame that they're not one long episode, because I think that would have Chef's Kiss would have been the best episode of the season.
It would have been the best episode of the show, hands
100%,
down.
yeah.
Had they combined it into one episode.
Oof.
And
Crazy.
as it stands, episode 5 may be one of the best episodes of the show. I disagree. I think episode 7 is the best episode of the show, or whatever the second flashback is. I think is the best episode of the show. But who knows?
I'm glad you explained that to me, because I didn't quite understand why it was the slash. I probably would have preferred just an ampersand in the middle of all of these instead, just to be like lost and found, like
or lost or found,
teach or whatever. Yeah, or something like
corrupt
that. Like,
or teach. Yeah, I can see how you could do that.
Just something more like that. Something about the slash throws me the fuck off. Like, it just makes me think like you just combined 2 episodes. Now, what you're saying though makes so much fucking sense that it's May and Osha's stories simultaneously. So yes, I'm going to give them that, because that's actually genius and I like that. However, something about it, because you didn't follow that convention exactly because 4 and 5 fucked you up, because if you didn't do it during those 2, then
you broke the pattern.
The pattern.
That's again,
my OCD pisses off.
Being careful to put our criticism in the right place.
Right.
That is almost certainly on the Disney Plus executives who told them the show had to be 8 episodes.
Oh, 100%. Someone
they
at
were
Disney
told
was like,
they had. This is a show that
8
massively got screwed over by the format. That when Leslie Headland made Russian Doll was great. Russian Doll was very clearly Netflix let them do whatever they wanted with Russian Doll. And as a result, it worked great. You can see the meddling of the Disney executives in this show.
For sure.
And how it's structured and how it's sent out to the audience, and where the writers and the creative team were trying desperately to bend over backwards to accommodate what Disney Plus wanted for this show. I don't know. We've got to talk about this actual episode.
I know. Sorry.
We've got to get into it, because the thing
we're only on the title.
I have so much to say about the Acolyte, and as far as I know, as far as the podcast I listen to, I think we may be the first ones that I know that are going to cover it.
I think you're right, because I haven't seen anybody cover it, or at least in our circle, I haven't.
In our sphere,
yeah.
RuPaul's did a couple of episodes on it.
They did, okay.
But for the majority of shows that I listen to, they have not gotten around to the Acolyte yet. So
maybe only the straighties did it.
Only the straight people
the straight
talked about the Acolyte when it was airing.
Okay,
I'm glad we didn't, personally. I'm glad we made the decision not to, because I'd much rather approach this first episode knowing what's in the last episode. And also, speaking for me personally, I had a really shitty time online when this show was coming out, and I didn't even get the worst of it. So if I needed distance from that, there's a lot of people I know need even more distance from this show, just to be able to look at it and not have those memories get brought up. But Bradley, we have desperately got to talk about this episode, because I have things to do later today.
Before we get into section 1.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Bradley.
There's an opening crawl.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do want to talk about the opening crawl.
So the opening crawl, I'll just read it verbatim so that we can talk about it. 100 years before the rise of the Empire, it's a time of peace. The Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, a powerful few learn to use the Force in secret. One of them, a lone assassin, risks discovery to seek revenge.
Centuries without war, huh?
I thought you would like that line.
Oh, I have that line written down. I remember watching that in the theater and going, sure, Jan. And I don't know. Look, I don't know if you can call the Nihil occupation a war.
Okay.
Bradley and I have not gone through the High Republic yet. But debatable whether you could call that a full-scale war. Hard to say. So technically it's right. This opening title crawl makes it seem like the galaxy has been at peace for centuries. Like 150 years ago, we didn't massive spoiler redacted the entire galaxy. By massive spoiler, also redacted. If you're keeping up with the High Republic, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up that like I mean, from what we know from context clues, it just says 100 years before the rise of the empire. So
Yeah,
theoretically,
this was also controversial because people
right,
were trying to date the show. They
dated,
were trying
yeah.
to figure out in what year it takes place, and they had dated it to like 80 something BBY, I
Sure.
think. It's like 72 BBY or something
Right,
just
because it's not a
because we're
full
about 50
hundred
years
years.
before the Phantom Menace.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what people were forgetting is like you if you include people thought it meant 100 years before the Phantom Menace, and according to Wikipedia, it says it's
Well,
132 BBY. So that's like
okay.
a
So
long time.
I'm completely wrong about. So I do know that in interviews they had said too, yeah, it's 100 years before the Phantom Menace. This was controversial. People weren't 100% clear on what they meant
But
because
is that
pedantic lore
true?
lords need to know. That is a good question.
Because it says 100 years before the rise of the empire. Are we
Which is
counting?
I interpreted that as being Revenge of the Sith.
That's what I
But
would
but
do. Yeah.
you can also make the case that the Phantom Menace starts the rise of the Empire. That the election of Chancellor
Yeah.
Palpatine starts the rise of the Empire.
That's true, but it just doesn't become an empire until Revenge of the Sith. So
Again, this is a debate that was had at the time, and we don't, I think, really
I,
have the answer to that
yeah.
yet. If we do,
So
I haven't seen it.
it's an interesting argument to
The point
have.
is, for the casuals in the audience, there has not been a full scale galactic war since the fall of the Old Republic.
There you go.
So that is
All right.
that is what the audience is clued in by this. And again, I talk a lot of times about there is a lot of pedantic lore stuff that we who read all of the books and the reference books and the comics and the video games and every web series that comes out and every short story and Star Wars Insider, and we know these things because as was correctly pointed out about me on Holodeck Divas, I am the type of person who needs to know every detail ever about a thing that I'm consuming. But for people who are not me, it's been a long time since we've had a big war. That's all
All
you
right.
need to know to understand this story.
Section 1. A mysterious assassin arrives on the planet Ueda in search of Jedi Master Indara. The assassin confronts Indara in a cantina and challenges her to a fight. Indara initially refuses, maintaining that Jedi do not harm the innocent, but the assassin provokes her by attacking other customers, forcing Indara to intervene. As the fight continues, Indara disarms the assassin and realizes she is someone familiar. The assassin distracts her by throwing a dagger at the barkeep, allowing her to fatally stab the Jedi.
Ueda is new. We've never seen it before.
I feel like everything in this show
It is
should be
not.
new, right?
We will get to it.
Okay.
But there is a planet in this that we have seen before that is not the obvious one that we have seen before.
Okay. Interesting.
We'll get to it. But Ueda is new.
It's a new planet. Okay, cool.
It's a new planet. I do want to point out too that I've seen this sequence twice in the theater. It was attached
Okay.
to the Phantom Menace,
Right. Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
right? So I saw that, and then I was lucky enough to be able to watch the first two episodes of this in the theater.
That's right. You went to the
So
special event.
this fucking rules in the theater. If they ever do a screening of this episode near
Yeah.
you and you are able to see it, go. Go
Yeah.
watch at least this first episode. Because this scene right here is unbelievably good in the theater. It's
Yeah, I remember
incredible.
watching it during Phantom Menace and I was like, holy balls. Like I was
Yep.
like, this is going to be the coolest thing to see. Like I was like, this is like watching a movie. Like this was a true like this is why you talk about like the funding for this movie, but like this is like a movie. Like this is a movie scene. This is
Yes.
so cool.
Yeah, and while I am, critical of them going over budget and there's points where they could have drawn back on it, the artistry on display here, the craft on display here for how this scene is shot, how this scene is choreographed, how it's acted, it's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible stuff to watch.
Speaking of the actors, I do want
Speaking
to
of the actors, you
quick,
want to talk about our two
yeah,
actors who are
let me
involved in this
talk about
scene
them real
before they
quick.
get into fighting?
We did previously mention them in our episode 0, but I just want to just quickly go through them just so that we can have a little refresh.
To be clear, we are going to talk about as many actors as we can. We cannot possibly talk about every actor in this show.
Right.
I know there was another show we had to say that about. I can't remember which one. This is another one that has a fuck ton of actors in it.
Yeah, I think I stuck to just like speaking lines only for the most part. I didn't do any of the prisoners. I didn't do any of like the miscellaneous Jedi or whatever. I strictly was like speaking lines only. I truly tried to stick with like our main people that we're going to be following throughout the story. So if I miss anybody, I apologize, but this is like a hard thing to do. If you want to go on IMDb and read everybody's credits, be my guest.
Yeah,
But
absolutely go do
yeah,
that.
yes,
There are a ton of actors in this. We cannot possibly, and a whole good chunk of the main cast is going to get introduced in episode 1.
right. So we
So we
won't have to
cannot
go through them
possibly
all the
talk
time.
about everyone.
First up, we have Amanda Stenberg playing the assassin. I put in quotes because we don't know their name yet. They had a supporting role in The Hunger Games. They also had starring roles in the films The Hate You Give and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. One Marvel thing that they did was a voice in Across the Spider-Verse. Thought that was
Nice.
interesting.
Do they have the Disney trifecta?
They do not, unfortunately. So all I need to do
Also,
is a Disney movie, and we're
Also,
good.
continuous shout out to them. You might have noticed that we are using they them pronouns for Amanda Stenberg. They have said that their pronouns are she they. So we do have a queer person in a lead role
I
in
do
this
love that.
show, which is awesome. Also, they have been very clear and vocal online about the harassment that they received for this show.
Right.
They have not taken that lying down. Disney has, which is bullshit. The amount of just vitriol that Amanda got for this role was disgusting. Disney absolutely needs to do better about protecting their actors from this sort of thing. But they were very vocal about what they have endured. And so props to them for being very clear and amplifying the fact that they got a lot of bullshit for this role, which is fucking ridiculous. I'm not just saying that, for this, but I'm also saying that because Skeleton Crew is about to come out. And there has
Now we
been
have
some
kids
discourse
involved. Yeah.
about the usual people are
Mhm.
online saying, well, if the actors are kids, that shouldn't stop us from being able to attack them for bad writing in the show. And I'm like, are you
Nope.
stupid?
Nope.
Like, not only stupid, do you have no empathy? Do you have no sense of decency whatsoever? Are you a fucking psychopath? Like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this that I am reading? This grifter bullshit being applied to literal goddamn children. I hope there is not a child anywhere in your life. I hope that there is not a child within a 50-mile fucking radius of you. You goddamn freak. Anyway, I am not going to go on a rant about that. I
No.
promise I'm not going to go on a rant, but this really fucking got me. When people, unironically, with no fucking understanding, were like, well, Jake Lloyd had to do it, had to go through it, so somehow that makes it fine. What the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yes.
What sort of mental gymnastic bullshit reality do you people live in? Like, genuinely, I want to know, are you missing parts of your brain? That's the only explanation I can come up with for that
And
line of logic. It is freak behavior. And good on Amanda Stenberg with this show, with The Acolyte, for calling it out and
No, for
clapping
sure.
back on it and being very vocal about not being okay with that. Because not just younger actors, but also like adult actors. Kelly Marie Tran was harassed off the goddamn internet because people were little fucking freak weirdos about her in the sequel trilogy. Daisy Ridley was harassed off at least one social media platform. I think it was Instagram.
Yeah.
John Boyega also harassed.
Well, that's the problem is social media, right? Like,
that's a big part of
comparing
it
it to
too.
like Jake Lloyd, he got it that bad, and there wasn't really even social media at
Oh
the time.
yeah, yeah.
Comparatively,
Can you
like
imagine?
now,
Yeah, can you imagine if Phantom Menace had come out then, and the
oh,
backlash
it would
to
have been
him
insane.
had been amplified by social media in the way that it is now?
I just don't
Like,
even want to think about that because that would be
Christ,
awful.
Christ. I'm happy for where Jake Lloyd is at now. He has had to do a lot of work to get there.
Right.
And if he wants to spend the rest of his life enjoying Star Wars privately and not doing anything with Star Wars ever, good. Good. He fucking deserves to have some peace for once in his goddamn life after everything he went through as a kid. Anyway, Amanda Stenberg, great actor.
Great actor.
Great actor. Great to see they were calling the shit out when they saw it. Who else is in this episode, Bradley?
The other actor in this scene is Carrie Ann Moss, who is playing Master Indara, best known for her role in the Matrix series. She's also been in several television series produced by Marvel Television for Netflix, most notably Jessica Jones. So that's her Marvel thing I thought to bring up. I forgot she was in that show.
She crossed over from Daredevil. She was in Daredevil originally, I
Yep.
believe. I don't think she was in a Disney thing, was she? I don't did she
No,
also
I
not
looked
have our
through her stuff. I
trifecta?
couldn't find anything, which is shocking because, she's not like
Did you say what
new.
she's most famous for?
Yeah, just The Matrix.
The Matrix. Yeah, she's Trinity in The Matrix.
Yeah. Well, because if you actually look at her IMDb or whatever, or her Wikipedia page or something like that, like she's internationally known for the Matrix series. It's not
Yes.
just like oh, we just know her in America as being in the Matrix. No. Overseas, they love the Matrix. This is not an American thing. This is a universal thing. The Matrix is a well-loved franchise. She's very well known. So glad to see her. And I'm glad to see that she brought that essence of the Matrix, her skills that she learned from fighting in those movies, the
Oh yeah,
kind of
she's
kung fu
doing
fighting.
she's doing the force fu here, and
Oh,
then later on she will demonstrate how good of an actress she is.
yes.
Because spoilers, Indara might be my favorite character in the show.
Really? Okay. I mean, it's not surprising, but it is.
I'm about to go to bat. Like I'm about to get in the trenches and defend Indara in the flashbacks. I think she was 100%
Ooh.
right, and I think she made every other Jedi in this make some mistake somewhere.
Interesting.
Kalnaka's is really not his fault. I will give Kalnaka this. It was not his fault. Indara is the only person that I'm like, there was not a single moment in their version of the flashback that I disagreed with her, even the ending, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Notice that Indara in this scene has two of the teardrop, like, I wanted to call them teardrop tattoos. I don't think they are, but
Okay.
in that kind of placement on her face, like right
I just pulled
behind
up a
the
picture
eye.
of it.
She has two of them in this scene.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but I assume it's a mourning thing or in
She
remembrance of
lost two
something.
people.
She only has one in the flashback, so I think one of them is Brendok.
Oh, she has two
I
here,
think
but she
one
has
of
one
them
in the
is in
flashback.
remembrance of Brendok. Because
Oh,
spoilers, she's gonna kill a lot of people by accident.
interesting. Okay. Interesting to think about. I don't know. It's hard to say because they don't acknowledge the fact that she has these dots on her face. They don't ever talk about it. But I did not notice that, and that's actually very interesting.
No, it's just yeah, it's just there. It's one of those lovely details. This is the thing I love about this show. There's so many small details in both the characters and the world. And this is one of those small details. She has these little mourning, like remembrance tattoos. She has one in the flashback and she has two here. And clearly one of them is Brendok.
And what I also love is during this fight, I mean, okay, so I like how Indara doesn't recognize May at first, or I'm sorry, the assassin. I'm trying to cover this in the sense that we don't know what's going to happen. So I'm trying to like
Meanwhile, I'm over here
ad-
casually
yeah,
spoiling the second to last episode of the
so
show.
I'm trying to
With a
adjust my talking about it as if we were watching it in sequence.
good luck with that. I'm gonna bring up what happens
I'm
later
gonna
in the show
try.
a
I'm
lot.
gonna try. So she's fighting the assassin, and she doesn't recognize her until later in the fight, obviously. I think it's actually very fascinating knowing what we know, and then she does recognize her, and then doesn't immediately like stop, change everything about what she's doing, and like be like, "Whoa, you're fucking alive!" Like this is like a big deal. Like I think it's underplayed here a little bit. Like it's how big of a deal this is that the assassin is here.
Well, she's also Andara is a consummate professional, and she's not going to drop her guard purely out of shock that May is alive. And I think May does manage to use that moment to get out of this
She
situation.
does actually, because she does grab a hostage or whatever for a second to distract, I guess, Indara, and then somehow she's able to leap out of out of here using the Force.
So I do want to talk about the fact that Andara does recognize that it is May, which is the moment I knew she was going to die. Is the moment she looked at that tattoo, and I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
no, you know something. You know something about what's going on here, and therefore, because this is the first scene of a thriller story, you have to die."
you're right.
She calls in the unknown Force user, and that's how they know it's an unknown. It's a Force user.
Which also
Um,
brings up something else that they acknowledge that there are Force users that are not necessarily Jedi in existence during this time, in a sense, because she's saying, unidentified Force user. That could be anything. That
Yes.
literally is anything.
There are not many, but there are organizations that are out there. And like the issue between the Jedi and the witches on Brindok is not that the witches on Brindok were doing some force shit that was unregulated. It was that specifically they were doing dark side whack shit with the Force, or the Jedi suspected them of that. Now they have a different philosophy, and we'll talk about that, but that was the issue, is that the Jedi looked at them and saw dark shit. You can be a Force user and not be a Jedi.
Right.
I also do want to point out the line, Jedi do not attack the unarmed. You'll notice that Indara does not draw her lightsaber until well after she realizes that May is in fact actually armed.
Right. She has those weapons or whatever. Because before it was just like, let me fight you with my hands kind of thing. And then she was like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
And then we're going to see later on, like, instances of, it's really interesting when this show has the Jedi draw their lightsabers and what that says about them to other people, particularly, you know, children who might be standing there, and the impression that that leaves on them. So the ending of this scene, I want to talk about the Grand Inquisitor's speech at the beginning of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I knew you were going to bring that up because this is exactly what I thought of.
I am. The whole speech about the Jedi Code is like an itch. He cannot help it, so he steps in and saves your saloon. You offer him a place to hide, blah, blah, blah. His compassion has been his undoing. Yeah, compassion is the weakness of the Jedi.
Right.
It always is. It always will be. They shouldn't change that. And when they do change that to try to address it, when they're put in a situation where they have to change that, that's how Palpatine gets them.
It's crazy.
Anyway, R.I.P. Indara.
So, what is that? What is it
I was
called?
so mad when I
was
saw
gonna say,
this
what is it
originally.
called in film again? When this is ever since Scream came out, what is this called? Where you put the very famous person in the very first scene of the movie or the thing, and then they die immediately in the movie. It's called Dead Star Walking or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Something along those lines.
It's a trope. It's
a trope in film where you get a very famous person to be in your thing, and then you kill them immediately in the beginning of the story. Kind of iconic, honestly. I really wasn't expecting it.
Yes. The trope is called Dead Star Walking.
Okay. Because arguably, out of the entire cast, I would say Carrie-Anne Moss is probably the most well-known, if not the most famous person they got to be in this film.
She is certainly the person who has had the biggest career up to this point. There are several actors in this, and we'll get to them, who are pretty well-renowned. And a lot of them, like, some of them are like workhorse actors who've been doing this for a really long time. But she is easily, like, internationally famous.
Right.
And the only person that even comes close to equaling her in terms of people know who this person is Lee Jung-jae.
Right, exactly. So I just thought that was very interesting that they took this trope. Now, was I expecting them to do this trope? I don't know. Like, what's crazy is they told us the premise very early on that, like, I think it was like in the trailers where they were like, a Jedi
is going to die. And we were in episode 0 like, God, I hope it's not Indara, but it's probably going to be Indara.
I don't know why I was so, like, non-believing that this is going to be her, but...
Denial.
It really was denial, and the fact that she died
is a river in Egypt.
Really sucks. Because also she's such a cool character. Like, why would we not want to see Carrie-Anne Moss as a fucking Jedi more? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like such a shame that they did kill her in this episode. Obviously, spoiler alert, she does come back in flashbacks later on, but the fact that she's not a continuous character throughout this series is kind of sad.
Anyway, Indara novel is coming in 2025, so expect me to talk about that when it happens.
That's right. With the terrible cover, a choice cover.
The cover that Bradley has some issues with.
I have some issues with the cover. However, very excited that they are doing a novel about her and another character that we'll talk about later. So I am delighted to see that we are getting tie-in material for the Acolyte still. 100%. At least, I think they've now announced 2 books.
There's more. They just announced more, like, last week.
Okay,
they announced more books.
Expect us to talk about those things at some point.
Expect us to talk about those things when they happen, but now we have to talk about the next section.
Section 2. Somewhere in space, Osha Anasea, a mechanic, responds to a work emergency on a ship. After fixing the issue, a Jedi starship arrives. Jedi Knight Yord Fandar and his Padawan board the ship searching for Osha. They locate her and begin questioning her about her past. The Padawan reveals a Jedi was murdered on the previous night, and the suspect matches Osha's description. Osha denies involvement, stating she was on the ship. However, when the barkeep from Ueda identifies her as the killer, Osha is taken into custody.
I want a pip.
You want a pip droid?
I want a pip. Like, I don't know if it's called a pip droid.
I was
or
going to
the
say, is it
droid's
called a
name is
pip
Pip.
droid or
That
is
is
it
a
named
great
Pip?
question. That is
I
the
didn't
thing
even look
Charles
this up.
didn't research.
I probably should have because it honestly
Pip
makes so much
Star
sense.
Wars. It's the thing Charles didn't research. It is a Pip repair droid.
Pip repair droid. Okay, cool. So she just calls it Pip,
It's
but
a
it is a
PIP.
Pip droid.
PIP. We don't know what PIP stands for. She just calls the droid Pip. I want one.
Also, this is the first handheld droid we've ever seen.
Yes.
Which
it's a
is
new droid.
wild because it's the first droid that has some kind of cognizance. Like it does have AI of some sense, but it doesn't have the ability to go or move on its own capacity. It is just a literal tool. Like that's wild to me.
It is like having a toolkit in your pocket that also can think.
And somewhat talk to you. I guess.
Somewhat talk to you. Speaking of droids, I would be remiss if I did not shout out the Gonk droid.
The proto-Gonk droid?
The proto-Gonk droid.
Because technically this is a Empire era Gonk droid. So this is like our earliest version of what a Gonk droid would look like.
Yep.
Which is kind of iconic.
Well, I don't know how far back they go. I think there's Gonk droids in the High Republic.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we invented that for Light and Dice. But, it may be that this is an older version of a Gonk droid.
Yeah, I like to think that this is like an Apple iPhone 4 Gonk droid. Like it's like a very early Gonk droid.
By the way, Mandela Stenberg is also playing Osha.
Oh, yeah, sorry. When I was about to get into the actors, but in the actors, I didn't put Amanda Stenberg as...
They are also Osha. So we have already talked about them.
So this is where it gets confusing because I think people were like, wait, what's going on? Like, why is Osha, she's now a random person on a ship? Because they haven't explained the twist yet of...
They haven't, and they will by the end of the episode, which we'll talk about.
Right.
Amandla is such a fucking good actor that they managed to pull off two distinct characters.
Oh, 100%.
The shift from May in the first scene to Osha in this one is night and day.
I
These
agree.
are clearly two different women.
Funny enough, my opinion is that I think that they play Osha better, which is funny. I don't know how you could play one character better than the other. However, when I think of Amandla, I think of them as Osha. I don't know why, but May to me seems like a totally separate actor person. Maybe it's because we don't get time a lot with
We don't
May.
get as much time with May as we got with Osha. A lot of the heavy lifting for May is done by her child actor.
Right, which we'll get to. Yeah. But I just thought
I know the kid actor shows up this episode.
I did not bring them up.
I think we're going to get to them in episode. Both Little May and Little Osha show up in this episode. We're not going to talk about them.
I'm not going to talk about them this episode. I think we should wait until the actual flashback episode because I feel like it's more important to talk about them there. That's a preemptive thing. But let's talk about the actors. First actor is Charlie Barnett, who is playing Yord Fandar.
Charlie Barnett.
He is known for starring as a firefighter / paramedic on the NBC drama Chicago Fire. His other starring roles include Russian Doll and You on Netflix. So we have to mention that Charlie plays for the team.
Yep. Yep. We mentioned this in our episode 0. We mentioned this in previous Acolyte coverage. Yet another queer actor being cast in this show.
Which, no surprise, which is probably where most of the controversy came from, obviously, is that...
A good chunk of the controversy, there were a lot of queer actors in this show. We're not even done listing them.
I know, it's crazy.
There's a lot of POC actors on this show. And wouldn't you know, people who are shitty don't like that. They have a very vocal problem with quote-unquote DEI casting.
Right.
And I'm like, shut the fuck up. The show is great. We're not done listing queer actors who are in the show, and we're not done listing people of color who are actors in this show. Not even by a long shot. So yes, the cast of this show, I love the cast of this show. And the cast of the show clearly loved working on it. They are vocally continuing to advocate for season 2.
I love that.
which I do think this story will continue in some form, but we'll talk about that in our recap.
Up next, I did list Padawan Tassi Loa is played by Thara Shun. I don't know how to say her last name. It's got those umlauts on the O's. I don't know how to say those or whatever they're called. She doesn't have a lot of credits, so the most recent thing she was in was A Quiet Place Day One. So
Which I heard was actually really good.
she's trying to get that resume bumped. She's in a Star Wars and A Quiet Place franchise. So good for her.
I look forward to seeing more of her in the future.
I do too. I really like in this scene I just want to talk about her for a second and just in general, just because she is an alien character. She is one of the more interesting alien species that we have in Star Wars, which is a Zygerian, which I love the cat people.
Yes, she's our first on-screen Zygerian live action.
Not
First
what I
one we've
thought.
ever seen.
I don't know
And
why I
it's a
thought what they were gonna look
Jedi.
like. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I thought I was like I thought it was gonna look different, I guess. I don't know why, but something about Zygerian, it is practical. Like it's very practical effects. I don't know why. I just didn't. I don't know why I didn't think this is what they look like, but this is what they look like. They just look like cats with horns. Like it's just it just is what it
It's
is.
the cat. It's more cat people.
Yes.
I don't know. This is an interesting case of where it's interesting to see how they're trying to transition something to the physical space, which is definitely a hell of a transition because the Zygerian like model, the design was made for animation. It's supposed to move like animation.
Right.
It's supposed to flow like animation. Here, it exists in meat space, which is weird.
Yeah, there's something about I love practical effects, don't get me wrong, and I love practical aliens. My only problem is I feel like with the aliens, whenever we do practical, the only ones that I think are successful are the ones that are slightly puppeted, right? Where they have somebody behind the scenes doing the eyes, doing the nose, doing whatever, making it flare, the eyes raised, the eyebrows, whatever. And then the performance actor underneath is just there, kind of like doing the body movements. I think in this sense, she has a little too much of her ears are clearly glued to her head kind of thing. Like they're not her ears, if that makes sense. There's something about it doesn't translate for me as those are her physical ears. I know she can hear out of them. They move when she emotes, stuff like that. Where if you go back and look at the animation, obviously, like, yeah, their ears are gonna move when they hear something. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
they're cats, basically. So like they're gonna move like cats in a sense. I think that's the problem here with this makeup. It was a little jarring to look at the
It
first
is
time I watched
easier
it.
to animate some aliens in animation because you're animating everybody anyway. And frankly, we know when a human is animated weird. We don't know when an alien is animated weird.
Right.
It is easier to do them in animation than they are in live action. Also, I suspect this character was supposed to be much more important later on
Really?
in the show. We introduce her, and then we introduce the concept that Yord has a Padawan. And then what happens to Yord, Bradley?
I don't know because I haven't gotten to any episodes after this.
Sure.
So
I'm just saying, I feel like trying
no,
to
I
set
agree.
up that Yord had a Padawan during the events of this show, who he then did not bring with them
It is
on the
odd.
mission. I'm just saying, I think she was supposed to be more important. Do you have anybody else you want to talk about in this scene?
Not in this particular scene.
I do want to bring up Anthony J. Abraham, who is
Okay.
playing her like buddy,
Oh, okay.
Philip. Also does not have a whole lot on his resume, but I did want to shout out that his first role that's listed on his IMDb is The Great, a series that I thought was really good.
Okay.
He's also in something called The Phantom of the Open, which I did check because I'd hoped it was a golf-themed adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. It is not.
Okay.
I
So
also I need to point out that her little friend Philip is like, we just casually went to Nar Shaddaa. And I'm like, when did you go to Nar Shaddaa? Were you guys like parked over it last night? You guys get to take like shuttlecraft just to Nar Shaddaa? What's going on there?
for those people who don't know what Narshada
Oh yeah, I
is,
probably should explain Nar Shaddaa. Nar Shaddaa, in Legends, Nar Shaddaa was this like big, almost kind of Las Vegas-y type of planet. In canon, it's more of a like more grounded planet, but it is still the same vibe. It's very Las Vegas. It's controlled by the Hutts, and it's very, very like seedy. That's
okay.
what that planet is. It's a pretty famous EU planet. notable for being in Knights of the Old Republic 2.
I do want to bring up the fact that you said Felix says she missed out on a trip to Nar Shaddaa, right? So it's Vegas basically. So, but the night before. So
Yes,
he says, you missed out on the trip. And she's like, what? I do my free time, basically is none of your business. So, as far as we know at this point, OSHA or whatever is now randomly on a ship. She was missing the day before. We don't know where she was. And we just saw a scene before this where somebody who looks exactly like her just fucking killed a Jedi. So as far as we know,
that's
she
thriller
just killed a
writing,
Jedi and now
baby.
she's at her
That's
job.
mystery writing. You throw those
I love
misdirects
it.
in there. Because if you watch this, you could be primed to not believe her.
Exactly, especially when Yord appears and he's like, "Yo, someone just fucking killed a Jedi," and they match your description. And it's for the audience right now, we believe Yord, honestly. Like, we do not believe OSHA at all because we don't have a reason to.
We don't know her,
Yeah,
and Yord is a Jedi.
right, exactly.
We are primed to like the Jedi, and this show is going to play with that a lot. We are also kind of primed to dislike the Jedi.
I was gonna bring that up in
Depends on
just
who
a
you
second
are.
with the Nemoidians.
I was about to say, yeah, speaking of people we are primed to dislike, Nemoidians are here. This is the Trade Federation. What?
That's crazy. OSHA works for the Trade Federation, I guess.
Yep, OSHA is a mechanic for the Trade Federation.
Which it is not lost upon me the double entendre or the pun or whatever that the main character's name is OSHA, and then the people that she works for are committing several OSHA violations by
So
having
many OSHA violations.
basically like low paid workers like instead of droids to do mechanical work on the ship. I
Yep.
find that very hilarious, honestly.
So you send OSHA out with Philip to do some repairs on the shield generators or whatever. One blows up, and OSHA is having trauma flashbacks while staring at the fire. Would it surprise you to learn that this was the most controversial scene in the first 2 episodes?
Why?
Well, because Bradley, obviously you can't have fire in space.
Oh.
That's the problem with this scene. You cannot possibly have fire in space.
I mean,
Therefore, the show is bad. Wokeness is ruining Star Wars. Fire Kathleen Kennedy. No, like it literally was that fucking stupid. People were like fucking screaming on the internet about how bad the show was because it had the audacity, the gall, the sheer fuck up to put fire in space.
well, then they must have really hated A New Hope when the Death Star exploded.
I was
and there
gonna
was
say,
a ring of fire.
The Death Star blew up and there was fire.
A fiery explosion.
A fiery explosion when it blew up.
Very dramatic, actually.
Mm-hmm. Big ol' ball of fire that happened.
Anyway, that's like the last thing I think of when I think of space. Like, I don't think of like, oh no, there can't be fire in space. Like,
yeah, people were real mad about this.
that's like the last thing I think of, but okay.
The people were real fucking pissed about this. It's stupid, but then we get some Jedi vectors. Hey, Bradley, you've read Light of the Jedi. It's the only High Republic thing you've thus far read. You know what a Jedi vector is.
Fancy looking ship that the
The Jedi vectors are specifically ships that the Jedi use during this time period. They have an interesting operation in that you need to insert a lightsaber into them to operate them. Only Jedi can pilot them.
It seems like a flaw in design.
Actually, there is an episode of Young Jedi Adventures that
Okay.
explores why this is very much not a flaw in the design. Because there are some ne'er-do-wells who try to steal some Jedi vectors. And it's a plot point in Young Jedi Adventures, I'm not fucking making this up, that they can't figure out how to activate the thing because it needs a lightsaber.
But what happens if the Jedi loses / destroys their lightsaber on accident?
Then they
before
have
get
much
back on the
bigger
ship?
problems than not being able to fly the ship.
Or is there like some kind of override that they can eventually do, or it just hasn't been explored?
There must be like some sort of override because in Light of the Jedi, Indira Stokes manages to pilot 2 Jedi vectors simultaneously. She's flying one and then using the Force to fly the other.
Okay.
Light of the Jedi is fucking crazy, but this is our first live action Jedi vector.
Got it. It's very pretty.
It's very, very pretty.
I like it.
We
I do like the
meet
design.
Yord. What I like about Yord is that Yord is like a Jedi. Like, he's obsessed with following the rules, but also he, like, threatens the Nemoidians to get what he wants.
He does it in a way, though, that is, I'm threatening you without threatening you, right? Like, he
Right.
does it in a way where he implies threat, And yet the Nemoidians are so afraid of the Jedi and being caught doing whatever they're doing that's wrong, I guess. They're like, okay, here, I'll tell you where she is. Like, it's
Yep.
very, he doesn't
They're
actually have to do
coward.
anything.
They're portrayed as being cowardly, very cowardly here.
Yeah.
Now, other material have explored the Nemoidians with much more grace and depth. The Nemoidians are just here to tie back to the Phantom Menace, and in the Phantom Menace, they're very cowardly and spineless. Because George Lucas kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But here they're doing the same thing.
But these particular Nemoidians do not have a very particular accent or very distinguished accent, so they're very different
No,
from a
these
different
are
place.
less bad than the ones in Phantom Menace. Dear Lord, Phantom Menace. Okay. Speaking of Phantom Menace, we do see echoes of Anakin in Osha's character.
Okay.
That she's playing with a dark version of the same idea, where Anakin was also controversial for being admitted because of his age. And also, Anakin was mourning his mom and the fact that he had to leave his mom behind.
Right. Yeah, because the Padawan brings up the fact that she's like, you had a pretty like hard time, like being a Jedi and whatever. And I don't think, I mean, well, you don't know, obviously. They're only giving us little bits of information, right? So they said something about she had a great loss. She lost her family or whatever.
Yes.
And that is like, okay, then why did you bring her into the Jedi Order then? Like that doesn't make
We will
sense.
find out. We will
I
find
know.
out the
It's just
answers to
so
those questions.
it's so interesting that they're bringing it up now, and it's such a like I'm sure like the Padawans even like what the fuck? Why would they bring you in? Like clearly you were like how this all this trauma happened to you. Why would you? They'd be like, oh yeah, let's give you powers and a lightsaber and stuff.
So, I don't want to spend a lot of time relitigating the show and dunking on stupid criticism from idiots who don't have media literacy or any understanding of the genre. However, it was a criticism of the first couple of episodes of the show where people would point out things like that and say, well, this does not make sense. And I'm like, it is a mystery story.
Right.
It wants you to ask questions. It wants you to go, that does not make sense. That is the intent of the genre. You are to look at something for which you do not have the full context and try to guess the rest of the context. And a lot of times, if a mystery is good, which this one is, by the end of the show, you will have all the context you were missing. Maybe not every question you have over the course of the show is going to be answered 100%, but basic questions like, what was the deal with her admission? That will be answered by the end of the show. And it's like, well, if you keep watching the show, maybe they will tell you the answer later on, because that is how mystery stories are structured. They do not give you all the answers right up at the top. That's not how this works. I do feel like, and this is my final note on this section, I do feel like it is an interesting sense of complacency that the Jedi, like, arrest her and then shove her on a prison barge. Like, I get they came in their vectors, but if they knew they were going to arrest her or there was a possibility, they clearly brought the prison barge with them. I'm like, what? Why did you not have a separate ship to take the Jedi killer back?
Well, that's my problem.
And
with
I
it
think
is
it's
that,
complacency. I think it's meant to show that the Jedi are so comfortable that they shoved her onto this prison ship and just assumed that if something happened, they could deal with it.
Yeah, but even like something is very serious as killing a Jedi, like clearly she's
And a
committed
master,
this,
no less.
right, a very high crime. There's absolutely no reason why they should have sent a fairly new Jedi Knight. He says that he became Jedi Knight like what, 6 years ago or 2 years ago or something like that, right?
He was two years ago. He
2 years
passed
ago.
his trials.
So he just passed his trials. He's only been a Jedi Knight for 2 years, and he just got his first Padawan, I'm assuming. Then they're sending this guy to go get a Jedi killer who killed a Jedi Master, like a suspected killer of the Jedi Master.
The Jedi
That
have no
doesn't
real
seem
sense
right.
of danger here. They don't understand that there's a threat. They believe that they can handle whatever happens. So
That's
it is
so wild.
very lax security measures. I think that is intentional.
Section 3. At the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Master Sol teaches younglings to meditate before dismissing them to speak with Master Vernestra Rowe. They discuss the recent death of Master Indara and the arrest of Sol's former Padawan, Osha, as the prime suspect. Sol is deeply shocked, insisting that Osha, a devoted Padawan, would never kill Indara. While Vernestra believes the evidence is strong, Sol thinks there must be a mistake. They decide to keep the situation a secret to prevent political repercussions, and Vernestra asks for Sol's support in seeking justice for Indara.
I just want to shout out the composer of this show, because the music for the Acolyte's incredible. They do such a great job with the music. The composer for this show is Michael Abels. Michael Abels is most known for being the composer for pretty much all the Jordan Peele films. He's the composer for Get Out, Us, and Nope. So really good composer. I do have to shout out the music. It's very prequels, which is funny because, hey, Bradley, are you familiar with the planet of Coruscant?
I don't think so. It sounds familiar, but they may or may not have mentioned it in one of the films.
You've kind of seen Coruscant before. It was in just a handful of the movies, very briefly. And then it's been mentioned one or two times in the TV show. No, it's fucking Coruscant is one of the most famous planets in Star Wars.
I
Like,
feel like most people know that and Tatooine. Those are like the two big
when I
ones
saw
that,
the name Coruscant pop up, I mentally append obviously, which I get if you're watching in chronological order, this is the first time you've ever seen Coruscant.
Right.
You have never seen Coruscant before if you were to start Star Wars with the Acolyte, which you can do. But if you started with the Acolyte, you've never seen Coruscant before. I just think it's funny. Coruscant, obviously.
I guess, yeah, this
Where
would be the
else would
first
this be?
instance. If you're watching in chronological order, this is the first instance of seeing Coruscant.
We also have new actors in this scene. And before we talk about who one of the new actors is playing, Bradley, who's our two main new actors in this scene?
So the first actor is Lee Jung-jae, who is playing Master Soul, mostly known in South Korea as a prolific actor. We in America know him for his role as the main protagonist of Netflix's Squid Game. Now, the fact that he is here is actually very interesting because I believe he learned mostly English for this role.
He learned English for this
Like,
role.
that's
Flat
insane
out, he learned
devotion.
it to play this part.
That's insane to me and amazing. Like that he's that devoted that he was like, I want to be in a Star Wars. I'm gonna fucking learn English.
I'm
Like,
going
so
to learn
I
a
can be in
whole
it.
new language
That's
as an
wild to
adult,
me.
which is fucking impressive.
I think it's almost
Learning
impossible to know another language as an adult, like, or learn another language as an adult. Like anything after like 10, if you're trying to learn a language, it's like good luck.
There's a reason that they make you take a bunch of foreign language classes in school when you're in high school.
No.
Because once you become an adult, once you enter your 20s, it becomes much harder to learn a second language.
I don't think I'll ever be able to. It's one of those things where like unless I was taking a literal class where someone is speaking
See, that's
to
how
me,
my boyfriend did it. My boyfriend is, I would say, conversational in French. I don't believe he's fluent in French,
sure.
but he is conversational in French. And he learned that in college.
That's awesome because I wish I could do that, but I think
Not
I would
awesome
have
for
to
me
take like an
because
actual class.
if he wants to piss me off, if he's angry at me for something and he wants to piss me off, he will lapse into French and start talking to me in French because he knows that I hate when I can't understand what he's saying.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, Lee Jung-jae, cool dude. Who is playing the other person in this scene?
Next up, we have Rebecca Henderson is playing Vernestra Rowe. She is known for her roles on the Netflix series Russian Doll and Inventing Anna.
What else is she known for, Bradley?
She's also married to the showrunner.
Yes,
Leslie
she's also
Headland,
known for being Leslie Headland's wife.
which is amazing, honestly. I mean,
Yes.
get that coin. I don't see that. I aspire to that level of like my wife runs the fucking show.
Yep.
Like that's what I want. Like I want that energy in my life. Like I want a husband who's like, you know what? I do own that production studio. You can have a job there. I want that energy in my life.
Well, and Rebecca Henderson is also killing it in this part. There's a lot of controversy around Vernestra Rowe, which I will briefly attempt to explain. So Vernestra Rowe first appears in the High Republic middle grade book, A Test of Courage. She is one of the quote-unquote main characters of the High Republic publishing initiative. It's a very broad cast. All of them get the time to shine. But of characters who keep turning up over and over and over again, Vernestra Rowe is one of the main characters. She is a prodigy. She was knighted at the age of 16 years old, which is absurdly young for a knight. So she's insanely talented. She's a Mary Allen. Mary Allen's lived for a very long time.
I was going to say,
she's
like,
about 200 years old in
Got
this.
it.
She's been around for a while. And there was a lot of controversy because the Vernestra Rowe that we see in The Acolyte, who is much more of a stickler for the rules and kind of willing to engage in politics and quote-unquote shady behavior, is very different than the Vernestra Rowe who we met in the High Republic, who actually goes and becomes a Wayseeker for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah, like so she's very different. It has been like 150 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say people
People
can't
can
change in
change.
150 years.
Uh, I really like her in this show. I
I
think
do
that
too.
she's
She's
very
actually,
interesting.
spoiler, my second favorite character,
I know
and
that
I love it.
Justina Ireland, who was the original creator of Ernesto Rowe, is also writing the Indara novel with
Oh,
Vernestra Rowe in it.
okay,
So I'm hoping that will kind of explain, and also the end of the High Republic, which is coming in 2025. The story's ending then. That will kind of lead into why she is the way she is in
got
the
it.
Acolyte.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they do give her a little bit more. I mean, obviously you have backstory because you've read the High Republic Initiative, but
Yes.
I don't have too much backstory for her, so I would love that this novel give her enough of a I want them to give her that 13th sister treatment, like where it's like I get enough information where I pretty much get it, like where she ends up.
It
I,
needs the
you know,
transition. For
yeah,
me, it needs the transition between the last we saw her as of recording this episode was the novel Tears of the Nameless. And I don't want to talk about what happens in Tears of the Nameless with her, but I want to see how she gets from the end of the Nihil crisis to where she is now. I need that transitionary something in in that transitionary period to give me a stepping stone. I do want to talk about the scene. I only have one note
okay.
for this scene, and that is I'm just gonna read it verbatim. We see Soul as a good Jedi immediately, but we also see that he is immediately attached to Osha in that he defends her the moment her name comes up. Also, Vernestra is kind of right in everything she says in this scene. That was my note, my one single note on the scene. So there's a lot to unpack there. Soul is presented as this. He's presented in a very Jedi moment where he's teaching younglings. But even this far back, the minute Osha's name comes up, he is at her defense. Like, that cracks immediately.
Yeah, I like how the difference is that Vernestra's very much in the mindset of guilty until proven innocent, and then Soul is like innocent no matter what.
For
Because,
Osha,
yeah, for
particularly,
Osha in
innocent no
particular,
matter
right.
what.
Exactly.
Like, his long term friend just got killed. Osha has motive to do it, and Soul knows she has motive to do it, and he defaults to protecting her, even though she has not been his Padawan for years. I just find that a very, very interesting early seed that's planted with regards to his character.
I do like that as well.
Also, Vernestra's point where she's like, this needs to be done quietly because our political enemies could use it against us. We're going to see later on in the show, she's right.
Yeah, this is a
She's
little
100%
little
right
sprinkle of something that's
to
gonna happen
try
later.
to,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people in the Senate who look at the Jedi and be like, why are we letting the Jedi run around with impunity?
Right. They're an
Why are
unchecked police
we
force. Yeah.
not getting in there and like, there's some debate over whether or not the Jedi need oversight in what they do. This is a complicated topic, and we'll definitely get to it when we get to the finale. But her point in that if something like this got out now, without like the facts, without Osha in custody, all of that, that would create a lot of problems for the Jedi while they're attempting to resolve this. I'm also kind of a Vernestra defender when it comes to this show.
I am too, and I don't have the High Republic brain rot that you do, so I can't be like, oh yeah, I read her in the book, so obviously I love her no matter what, like you can. But I actually think that so far in watching the show, like she is the only person with an actual like totally objective third party, like I don't have any stake in this game other than, avenging the death of somebody, right? Or like getting justice for this person who has been murdered. And that's all she cares about because she's a Jedi, whatever. I love that she's very much so like, no, Indara was a Jedi master. Somebody murdered her. This is the evidence. Clearly, it was Osha. We're going to have a trial and figure it out, but I'm going to get her first and then like figure it out later, kind of thing. Section 4. Aboard a prison transport, Osha speaks with her fellow inmates who invite her to join their escape plan. Osha expresses her faith in the Jedi, leading an alien inmate to dismiss her optimism. A cyborg inmate triggers a signal that shuts down the droid pilots, pulling the ship out of hyperspace and into an asteroid field. Chaos ensues as some of the prisoners escape in a pod, leaving Osha behind. Osha attempts to use the Force to retrieve her fallen pip droid, but fails. However, the droid slides towards her, and she manages to grab it and free herself. She attempts to help another prisoner left behind, but he attacks and steals the last remaining escape pod. She braces for impact as the ship crashes on an icy planet.
So the Jedi drug violent criminals.
Yes, they put some kind of Staros whatever it is, or what is it? What is he called in Marvel? Or is it DC that has the star alien?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's like some kind of thing where it gets on your face and it mind controls you. So it's like a
Yes.
similar alien thing where it covers
They're
your mouth and it
basically
like,
sending
yeah,
him on an LSD drug trip
kind of love that.
with this thing on his face.
I kind of love that.
And meanwhile, Osha's over here like, I have faith in the Jedi. Girl, they are drugging someone right behind you.
Also, you're in prison, so
Also,
clearly
yes.
you
Well,
shouldn't have a lot of faith in them.
she clearly thinks she's going to be vindicated.
Right.
Like she
If
very
they
obviously thinks she's going to be
if
vindicated.
this ever goes to trial.
Yes. That it's flimsy, it's not gonna work, yada
Right.
yada yada. She's very clear that the Jedi are going to protect her, and she also thinks of the Jedi as good. She thinks of the Jedi as people who stand up for compassion and nobility, because that's what she sees Soul as. And that will be important later, that her
Right.
main reference is Soul, a dude that she thinks is a pretty good guy. My next note is LMAO, the droids are chairs.
Okay, that was literally my only note for this scene. I think this scene's great, and it's a good, interesting scene. However, the droids turning into chairs is probably arguably the funniest and best thing that Star Wars has ever done.
This
Like,
is so fucking funny. I
this
love
is
that the pilot droids can
hilarious.
become chairs.
Yes, that should always be a thing. All chairs should be pilot droids, and then when
Yes.
there's not a droid piloting, they're chairs. I love it.
I find it very interesting that Osha can't use the Force
I thought that was
in this
interesting too.
scene. Her Force powers have faded away. I can't remember when the next time she will use the Force is. It may be the finale that she uses
We're
it
gonna have to
again.
keep track of that because
We're gonna have to
we'll
keep
make that
track
a
of
thing
that.
we keep track of
But it's
because
very
yeah,
clear. Talk about the tight writing of the show and how good it is. We clearly see with our eyeballs. We are not told. We see with our eyeballs that she cannot use the Force.
right.
Not only can she not use it, she tries and she fails.
Which I find interesting because I think in the previous two scenes or whatever, the Padawan said something along the lines of she left the Jedi Order 6 years ago. So she's been
Yes.
working as a mechanic for the past 6 years. So she had Jedi training up until 6 years ago. That's not that long. So the
And
fact that
Obi-Wan,
she never
Obi-Wan
uses it,
Kenobi, who is a master,
right?
didn't use the Force for 10 years and had to struggle to get it back.
Very interesting. Yeah, she didn't cut herself off from the Force like he did, like where he specifically like went out of his way to be like, no, I don't want the Force anymore. Or like same with I think Ahsoka did the same thing where they like cut themselves off from the Force so like that they don't have a real connection anymore.
Luke did.
Or Luke did. I'm sorry.
Luke did, not Ahsoka.
So I feel like Osha did not do that. Osha might have left the Jedi Order, but she didn't cut herself off from the Force. Because think about it, if you're
I think it just
a
atrophied.
person,
I
yeah,
think it's like a
because it's like
muscle
a
that she
muscle.
didn't run.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have ongoing medical issues that I'm fine. I don't want to talk about them, but as a result, there was about a year where I couldn't really do any exercise
yeah.
at all. And lately I've been back to running again, off and on when I can. And working out muscles that you have not worked out in over a year sucks. It
Yes.
sucks because you remember how strong you used to be with them, and now they're
Mhm.
not. And also, those muscles have gotten complacent. They're not used to doing that level of work. So I think that's what's going on here. Is for whatever reason she can't tap into the Force the way that she did when she was a Jedi.
Right.
I also love that she tries to save the guy that's being drugged, and that compassion immediately backfires on her.
We saw what happens when you're compassionate in the very first scene, and then now she's dealing with that same exact issue
She's
of
thinking like a
compassion hurts you.
Jedi.
Yeah.
She's
Mhm.
still thinking like a Jedi. Even in 6 years later, push comes to shove, she is defaulting to thinking like a Jedi. Because she holds the Jedi as this ideal of nobility.
Right.
We see the vision, we see early in the episode, we see where the show is going to go. It's also obvious now. It's also very visually impressive. Like, I have my criticisms of the production of this show, and how there was a lot of stuff in here that really didn't need to be in here, that I think is why it went over budget. But I can't deny that this shit's impressive looking. Especially the ship crash is really impressive.
Yeah, it's really good. Section 5. On Coruscant, Padawan Jeki Lon informs Master Soul that Master Vernestra requests his presence at the detainment level. Jeki questions Soul about keeping holopics of his former Padawan, warning it could lead to attachment. But Soul argues that the past memories help prevent repeating mistakes. At the detainment level, the recaptured prisoners claim that the Jedi killer orchestrated their escape. Under Soul's mind trick, one of the prisoners reveals Osha helped him survive. Soul seeks permission to find Osha on the icy planet. Vernestra allows him to assemble a discreet team.
You want to tell us about who's playing Jackie Lon?
Jackie Lon is being played by Daphne Keane. Her breakthrough role was as Laura in the Marvel film Logan, which, spoiler, she just reprised her role in Deadpool versus Wolverine. She also starred in the HBO series His Dark Materials, if you really want a good show that she's in. I love that based on the
Please
Golden
watch
Compass.
His Dark Materials. It's so fucking good.
It's the best adaptation of The Golden Compass that I've ever seen. The movie was great. Nicole Kidman, chef's kiss. Okay. But
I do have a soft spot for some of the casting in the movie.
yes.
I do have a soft spot for it.
However, the
She
show
is, I believe, Lyra
is so good.
in
Yes,
the show.
she's the main character. Yeah.
Yeah, she's Lyra in the show.
Such a good show. So definitely watch Daphne Keane in that.
Nice. I love this little discussion between Jackie and Soul because Jackie's kind of right, but has a very dogmatic understanding of the no attachments thing. Here's the thing, Soul's also kind of right, but I also think he's wrong.
He's right for the right reasons, wrong for the wrong reason.
He's right, but for the wrong reason.
Right.
Yeah. That again, we view him in this early episode as this paragon of nobility. So when he says things like this, we go, oh, he has an interesting interpretation of the Jedi thing of non-attachment. Now we look at this and go, oh, buddy, you really should have let this one go.
Yeah, it is interesting because she does bring up a good point of, oh, like I only know what they taught me in school, which is attachments are bad. But then he's like, no, you can learn from this, blah, blah. And what he's saying is right, technically.
The
And
words are correct.
the words are correct.
The idea is wrong.
Right.
And
And
how he's executing.
I think Jackie is getting the right lesson from what he's saying. However, the intention behind his words are just false. Like he doesn't actually essentially believe what he's saying, right?
No, he believes that he's right.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm sorry.
He believes in what he's saying.
Right.
But he doesn't really believe in non-attachment in the way that the Jedi do. He's just managed to think himself into a corner where his attachment to Osha is fine, actually.
Right.
Because
other attachments are bad.
All these
this
reasons,
is fine.
it's very how someone who is a religious person who has studied a lot of religious texts for their own whatever religion they are a part of. Religion is a lot like law, especially when it comes to Christianity, evangelical Christianity, which is where I grew up. So that's my frame of reference. It's a lot like law. You can kind of make it say whatever you want it to.
Right.
If you make a good enough argument, you can kind of make it say whatever you want it to. And there's a lot of commentary on the Jedi as a religion in this show. So you've been mentioning the ice planet over and over again. The ice planet has a name, Bradley. Its name is Karlak.
They just mentioned it.
They just mentioned it in this scene, which is why I'm bringing it up now.
Yes.
We have seen Karlak before.
Oh, interesting. Okay, where have we seen
We
Karlak?
first saw Karlak in the Clone Wars.
Okay.
In the episode A Friend in Need, which let me check. It is season 4, episode 14. It is the planet on which Death Watch sets that village on fire.
Interesting. Now,
and I also believe it's a planet where Bo-Katan slaps Ahsoka's ass.
Okay, I don't think that's going to be on the Wikipedia, but
no, it definitely happened.
I know, but I can't.
It's in the show.
Yeah.
No, it's the planet to which Ahsoka traveled with Lex Bonteri in order to try to do an alliance with the Death Watch. It goes badly. A village gets burned down. The flamethrower does get used appropriately to create terror in the villagers, and that's the same planet that's happening here.
Also, I guess at this point, so like in Clone Wars, it's like a settlement, right? That
there's people living here.
Okay. So at this point, maybe it's more or less deserted.
Yeah, I mean, and they just kind of drop out of hyperspace randomly at it, which is very Star Wars. It's like we pulled the ship out of hyperspace and just happened to be approaching a planet.
Which, if you really want to get technical with all this science stuff, space is so large, the chances that you would drop out of hyperspace next to a planet seems very...
Right, if you want to make a bad faith argument about this, to which I would counter... This is a series about magical space wizards, and also you can travel across the galaxy at faster than the speed of light by deforcing into an alternate fucking dimension.
Or you could just hitch a ride with whales.
Or you could just hitch a ride with whales, who will take you through an alternate dimension, but it's gay now.
Right. Anyway, so that's why anytime you apply logic to Star Wars, just remember, there are whales in space that travel to different dimensions at the speed of light.
You
Just throw
have
that out
to
there.
you have to use your logic sparingly. You have to apply
Yes.
it to, does this make sense for the character that we've seen thus far? Is this a
Yes.
thing that seems like it would be reasonable to happen in a political or social structure in which living things have to talk to each other? Things like that, right? You can't really apply it as, oh, the physics doesn't work. Shut up. Shut up. There could be fire in space. I also want to point out the guy that is rambling that Soul has to calm down. It's not a mind trick, by the way. He like calms this guy down so that he can answer questions. This guy says about OSHA, quote, I sensed her darkness. This guy is clearly not in on the trying to blame OSHA. It's interesting that he says he sensed her darkness while he's rambling. He wasn't in on that plan originally. He was, when the breakout actually happened, he was being drugged by the starfish.
That's right.
So this is another case of you go back and watch this after the fact, and there are early warning signs for OSHA. And this is one, which I thought that was an interesting line.
Section 6. Back on the planet Karlak, Osha wakes up amid the wreckage of the crashed prison ship and follows a hooded figure. She experiences a vision where the figure reveals itself as her sister, May, who admits to killing Indara and vows to kill everyone. Osha then wakes up in the snowy wreckage. In hyperspace, Sol explains to his Padawan Jeki that Osha's twin sister, May, started a fire that killed their entire family, with Osha as the sole survivor. Sol took Osha as his Padawan and believes May is dead. When the Jedi arrive on Karlak, Osha flees through the tunnels but is cornered at the edge of a cliff. She slips and falls, but Sol uses the Force to save her. Osha tells Sol that May is alive and they take her into custody.
I do want to point out this is Jeki's first mission.
Okay.
So keep that in mind as we go through everything that will happen for the rest of the series. This is Jeki's first mission.
Her first mission, got it.
She is set up to be a very sympathetic character to the audience. She's a Padawan. It's her first gig. She just got a new master. It's very traditional Star Wars protagonist.
I want to bring up the fact that you say that because why would they introduce Yord's Padawan, but then introduce Jeki as a Padawan character? It seems like a duplicitous thing in the script to have. Like, why wouldn't
Again,
Jeki be Yord's Padawan?
I think personally that Yord's Padawan was intended to come back later on. That was set up for future storytelling that didn't happen, and so she's this weird kind of thing in the script where he has a Padawan in the first scene, but who has clearly met OSHA. Like, I think it's important that Yord's Padawan met OSHA.
Right.
But we don't see that play out.
Strange.
Because there's no second season of the show as of recording this. Who knows? We'll talk about that in the recap.
Okay, cool.
We also see a Selkath as they're exiting the Jedi walking area to get to the hangar bay. Selkath are an alien that are from Knights of the Old Republic. Very famous EU alien. They have existed in Star Wars canon for a while, but this is our first time we're ever seeing one on screen. All right. Our podcast is what it is. And look, Bradley, I'm going to be clear. I'm very proud of the work we've done on this podcast. I think you and I have great conversations. I think we do a very good job looking at media, trying to engage with it on its own terms, look at it in the broader sense of Star Wars, how things are produced, how things are written, trying to take it with this very analytical angle to look at this content of the show.
Sure.
We are also very homosexual men.
I don't know what you're talking about. What are you referencing?
So when I reference the bit where Sol and Jeki walk into the room and Charlie Barnett is stripped down to his pants, no appropriate thoughts were had about this scene. The first time I saw this, I think it was like a trailer or something, like everything else leaked out of my ears. I saw this on the big screen and I was like, what is happening in this scene? I don't understand.
I am mad because for those of you who may not remember, the only shirtless man that we get in Star Wars for the younger generation was in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin wakes up in a painstaking sweat from his bed, his muscles rippling.
That was it for the longest time. That was
all we got for the longest time.
You knew. You fucking knew how gay you were by your reaction specifically to the Anakin Skywalker wakes up shirtless scene.
Yes. One of the best moments in cinematic history, honestly. And then, you know, Disney decided to go in a different direction later on with Kylo Ren
And his
with
massive tits, yes.
massive titties and high-waisted pants.
I would
That
also like to thank Ryan Johnson for that.
I would like to
Um,
thank him because
thank you for again continuing the tradition of hot men in Star Wars being shirtless.
gorge.
And I'm not. I'm Kylo Ren. Fuck off. Adam Driver. Absolutely take your shirt off at any
There you
point
go.
you would like to.
Now,
But thank you for continuing to give the girls and the gays what we want, which is a hot shirtless man.
and I will say, so Anakin's scene, I think, is only like maybe 5 or 6 seconds. It's not that. Kylo's is a little bit longer. It's actually kind of a joke in the scene because she's like, "Can you put some fucking clothes on?" Basically. That's a little bit longer. Yord is standing here like a solid minute and a half with his shirt off, like, and it's so good. And it's just like, yes, yes, Leslie, just make Yord shirtless all the time for no reason. I don't know why he needs to be shirtless.
Why does he need to be steaming his robe? Who fucking cares?
Who cares? It's
Who cares?
hilarious.
This
I love
show,
it.
look, this show was made for gay people.
Clearly,
For the girls and the gays.
clearly.
This is who this show was made for. Because we have Trinity from the Matrix doing Force Foo. We have Charlie Barnett is shirtless. Like, this show, Charlie Barnett, congratulations on you.
Yeah, just for
Congratulations
being around, you know?
for being around and for looking like this. Hold on, I want to check something really quick. I don't think it says if anywhere if Charlie Barnett has a partner, but if he does, I want to congratulate that person, whoever they are.
I don't.
Well
I
done.
actually don't like that person.
Now, Bradley, don't be sour grapes. But just congratulations to Charlie Barnett
For sure.
on looking like that and being that good of an actor.
Loves it.
Because that is a beautiful man who is turning in an incredible performance in this role.
Also, I do love Jackie's line of "Yord, put your clothes on." Like,
I'm so happy that one of the publishing initiatives we're going to get is Jackie and Yord.
I think this line alone, like their interactions alone, lead me to believe that that novel will be so good because I feel like they have such good chemistry together. Like, oh,
I cannot wait because she's such a by the book Padawan. She comes in, she has her Jedi schooling, but she's also very casual
yes.
with people she likes. Like, it's funny because the way she treats Soul, where she's like permission to speak freely and calling him sir, is so different than the way she treats Yord.
Yeah, she's like, Yord, you're a fucking idiot.
Yord is her friend. Like, Yord is clearly her friend.
She's so funny.
I do like that they do the reveal of the twins immediately. That's not something we stretch out for multiple episodes.
True.
We learn it in the scene where Osha's having the vision.
Right.
I'm not sure why she's having the vision.
Again, that was my thing. It was one of those things where like I felt like if you removed this from the story. Now, to be fair, I do love show don't tell, but
it serves kind of a narrative purpose.
In
that it tells Osha that May is alive, which is not information that she had up to this moment. My question is why the vision is happening. Because visions in Star Wars traditionally are either tied to a location that you are in, a meditative state that you are in, or somebody is actually doing it. So Snoke bridging between Rey and Kylo. Yeah, so she's having this vision and it gives us this information that we didn't previously have.
Right.
So I think that's the narrative purpose of it here. I would say I wish she learned the information in the end of the second episode, even though we, the audience, really should have learned it here. But it also does kind of make sense for the second episode. The second episode can't happen if Osha doesn't already know May's alive. Also, Soul thinks May is dead. That's another key point. Or at least he's telling everybody that she's dead. I think he thinks she's dead.
I think he thinks she's dead, for sure.
I think he thinks she died in the redacted moment from later on in the show.
Yeah, it's confusing because we don't have all the puzzle pieces, right? Like, so it's one of those things where it's like, at this point in time, we don't genuinely kind of know what's going on. Like, we're like, wait a minute. Now, obviously, we find out she has a twin sister, which
is good that they dropped it on us here and
they let us know she has a twin. So now Osha can know that obviously May is alive, that clearly May is the one who committed this crime, not her. So she can fully back that. I mean, she already did because she's like, I'm not lying. Like, obviously I didn't do it. But now she can do it with conviction of I know who did, right? So it's not like, oh, well, obviously there's a random killer out loose blaming me. No, we
No,
know
we
who
know
it
who
is
it
now.
is right from the get-go.
Exactly.
This show is a mystery, but that's not the mystery.
That's not the mystery, correct? Which is
That's
good
the
that they
mystery
didn't do
of
that.
this
Yeah.
episode, but that's not the mystery of the show, which
Right.
is it's going to turn out to be much more clever than that. I think it's interesting that Sol is the one who tells Jackie and Yord that May killed Osha's family. He's sure throwing her under the bus a lot because he thinks she's dead.
Yeah, and it's without trying to like get into the plot points of other episodes, it's very easy to blame somebody who's dead, right? For anything. It's easy to
Oh, it's
say,
real
you
easy
know,
to scapegoat somebody. I'm
yeah,
bringing this up for a specific reason. Take note of the fact that it's real fucking easy for Sol to blame May for everything that went down. He doesn't even blame the rest of Osha's family. He lays
right.
the blame solely at May's feet. Real fucking interesting that he's going to do that in the context of the rest of this show. God, I love the writing in this show so much. The writing's so fucking good. That's the thing. The writing of the show is so fucking good. Speaking of the writing being good, you notice that as they're pursuing her through the cave, Yord is the only one who draws his lightsaber.
Yes. Now,
Sol doesn't because he would not draw his lightsaber on Osha,
right.
and Jackie is following Sol's lead. Yord is the only one who draws his saber.
I will give your slight leeway that because his lightsaber is yellow, it does cast off a nice light, and they do need to be able to see in the cave. However, that's like the only like little give I'll give him that they need a light flashlight. Other than that,
Yes, and using your lightsaber as a flashlight is a time-honored Star Wars tradition,
right.
most notably in the Jedi Fallen Order game, as well as in The Rise of Skywalker, when they make a dick joke out of it.
Also, this is, if I'm correct, the first time we've seen a yellow lightsaber in live action.
No, end of Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
But this show will be the first time that we see a yellow lightsaber
Canonically.
in action.
Okay. Okay.
Canonically in order, but also in action
In
on
action, because
screen.
Rey doesn't actually use it. Yeah.
Yeah,
She just turns it on, and then
she just
that's it.
turns it on. We
You're
don't
right,
see
you're
her actually use it.
Right. Not until her movie, I
This
guess.
will be the first time we see one that's actually being used.
That being said, I really like the yellow lightsaber. I love the color.
You know what? I have a yellow crystal, which is unfortunate that I need to take new photos for my social media because I tried to take photos with the yellow crystal and it just didn't work. My boyfriend has one of those color changing FX lightsabers.
Oh, okay.
I need to get more images of, because right now it's always sort of bothered me that a lot of my profile pictures are me holding a yellow or a green lightsaber when the whole shtick is gold.
I love gold.
Gold Squadron.
Yeah.
Like the whole association is with the name of the show. So I want a gold lightsaber photo, but I don't have one. Anyway, I also love the yellow lightsaber a lot. I think it's very cool.
It's up there with purple for me. Like it's like one of those ones where I'm like,
Great news, we're going to see one of those too, but I don't know if we're going to see it in action. My final note for this sequence is that this whole scene with the I didn't do it, it's very evocative of the Ahsoka being framed arc from Clone Wars, The Wrong Jedi, which is also evocative of the movie The Fugitive. So we're continuing those themes through Star Wars. And also there is an incredible twist on it where, yeah, no, they can just pull her back up. Like, you can just do that. You are Jedi. Sol remembers he has the Force. Anakin Skywalker does not.
Yeah, I sometimes I feel like Jedi are dumb for the sake of plot sometimes. Like it's just like you have telekinesis at all times. So use it for literally everything.
The Force is there to be used when it is convenient to tell the story that they want to tell.
Section 7. On a mysterious planet, May walks along a rocky shore while a distorted voice speaks about the Jedi. He claims that those who attack the Jedi with weapons fail. He asserts that the Acolyte kills without a weapon. May approaches a distant dark figure wielding a red lightsaber.
I have only one note for this whole section, and it is, oh, hi, Darth Teeth.
Ooh, I wonder who this is.
I wonder who this is.
I do like the end clip being May going back to her quote unquote master, right? Like as far as we know, this whole thing, this is her master that she has reported to or who is setting her on this journey. And he's got this whole monologue about, you know, talking about how the Jedi don't fear lasers or steel or whatever he says. and that the Acolyte kills without a weapon. I'm curious to what that all means because I don't even think by the end of the show we know.
Yeah, and his broad overarching point is like, so look at the prequels, right? You could theoretically march an army into the Jedi Temple and kill every Jedi inside of it. But the problem is the idea of the Jedi. The problem is what the Jedi represent. You can't just go in and gun down the whole temple with your army of clone troopers. That's not going to work. What you have to do is you have to kill the idea of the Jedi.
Right.
You have to kill this image that Osha has, for example, in her head of the Jedi as paragons of nobility. When you can strip that away from them, when you can show that the Jedi are flawed human beings like everyone else, when they're no longer on this pedestal, when you have broken the pedestal out from under them, you have smashed it to pieces, they are going to fall and they are going to smash their own brains out on the ground below. And if they don't, the people that are disappointed that the Jedi are just like everyone else, just humans with flaws and failings, and they can't always meditate that away, those people are going to tear what's ever left of them apart. Anyway, the show's about that. That's the thesis statement of the show.
I love it. Would you like to know who wrote and directed this episode?
I would love to know who wrote and directed this episode.
This episode was written and directed by Leslie Headland, who is also the creator of the show and showrunner of the show.
And Leslie Headland, most notable for, I believe, Russian Doll on Netflix.
I think that is her.
Prior to this moment.
Russian Doll on Netflix is her most notable thing. I think she also did. It's called Single Drunk Female. There's also another thing. She did a Heather's reboot. That was a comedy special thing.
Oh, she did the god awful Heather's reboot?
Yeah, I think so. But she was just a director, I think. Executive produced the pilot only, and she directed 4 episodes.
Okay, so she wasn't super involved.
She wasn't like super involved in it. Like she didn't create it like
reboot.
This or Russian Doll, but she only created Russian Doll and The Acolyte. Those are the only 2 things she quote unquote created. So it is worth noting that she wrote 2 of the episodes this season and directed 2 of the episodes this season. So we'll get to
there's a writer's room for this.
I was gonna say
other people wrote this show.
But she did this one, which makes sense of her doing the pilot, obviously. The next one I think is that she wrote was Teach/Corrupt is the one she wrote. I don't know which. She directed the next episode though, so she didn't write episode 2, but she directed episode 2.
All right. Well, Bradley, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
I think this is a really strong opening for what's considered a murder mystery thriller. I mean, really, it really is. There is some kind of like I don't know how to explain what the show is. It's crime mystery.
It's a thriller mystery show.
Yeah, it's great. We haven't had anything like this in Star Wars before. This is such a fun.
We've had attempts at this, but nothing to this scale.
I think the only time we've ever done anything similar was when
the 5's arc in Clone Wars was an attempt at something like this.
Okay. I like that then. This is so great. Such a great show. I love the era. I love just like the aesthetic of the show, I think. I love this like High Republic era. I'm assuming that's what we're calling
this is the tail end of the High Republic.
Tail end of High Republic era. So, and I think the books are also kind of lumping this in slightly with the High Republic books. The 2 books that they're coming out with, plus the
they're gonna sort of bridge the gap between them.
So this is quote unquote the bridge, right? This show is supposed to be the bridge between what we would consider the prequels and then the High Republic publishing initiative. I love the aesthetic. I love the characters. So far, everybody is an interesting character. Everybody has more, like you want to know more about that character. There's no one here what I would consider filler yet, or anything like, oh, why do we need another pirate character? Why do we need another, scoundrel character or whatever? So far, everybody has a purpose or an interesting aspect to their character. Jecki is this by the book Padawan, but like also not. Then Yord is this really like strong by the book Jedi who's kind of annoying, but like also hot. And then there's also Sol, who's a very complicated character. Like they're just doing such a good job of like giving us all these different characters, and it's just an ensemble cast of like just more, give me more. I need to know more about these characters. There's no glup shido. There's no like I not getting enough information about random person in the background. Like everybody has a purpose, and I love what they're doing so far, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
My final thought on this show is that it's really fun to rewatch this show. I like this show a lot.
Okay.
That's it.
I like it.
That's it, because we are literally coming up on. I was like, let's start recording this at 10. We did not start recording until 10:30, and we've been at this for almost 2.5 hours now. So plug bulls. Bradley has done reality TV. He has worked on such shows that you can find on Bravo and Peacock as Married to Medicine, Temptation Island, Queen's Court, and most recently, The Circle on Netflix. If you want more High Republic in your life, I am on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice, which is set in the High Republic. If you want more thriller mysteries with gay people, I also write those. You can find it on Amazon. It's called Beach House Studios. There's 2 books out now. The Beach House is 1 word, 1 H. All right, Bradley. Next week, we're going to talk about more of the fucking Acolyte, I guess. I'm just glad we don't have to do this for 20 weeks like we did with the Bad Batch.
Although so far it's feeling like it's going to take us 20 weeks.
It feels like it's going to take 10,000 years.
No, I think because this first episode was so like introductory, like we had to do a longer episode. Trust me, I think moving forward we're gonna get a little bit faster through these episodes.
You say this now, but I know episode 3 is coming. You say this now, I know episode 3 is coming. And you know what else I know is coming, Bradley? Our socials, which you're going to run. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com to let us know. You can also find us on Twitter at @GoldSquadGaze, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at @GoldSquadronGaze. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gaze YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze, and we'll see you next week.
Jedi Master Ueda? Okay.
Ueda.
Let me just type that out phonetically so I can do that.
Ueda.
Ueda. I'm going to do Ueda.
Ueda.
Okay.
We're
Section
so good
1.
at podcasting.
I know.